So before you go firing Jay Gruden, why don't we take a look at somebody else's record when we talk about firing somebody? All right, why don't we look at just real quick? Let's run through the numbers. 139 and 180 and 1. 139, 180 and 1. A win percentage of 43%. That's horrible. And that's taken over 20 years. You know what happened 20 years ago? May of 1999? Dan Snyder bought the Redskins. So for 20 years, we've had this megalomaniac, fanboy, professional athlete, sycophant treating the Washington Redskins as his own fantasy league, his own fantasy team. Hiring old players, screwing up our roster, meddling with the players, mingling, in my opinion, inappropriately. Dan Snyder has to be the worst owner in the history of the NFL. The Browns have switched out their owner multiple times. I think it's time that we kind of force Dan Snyder out of town. It's time to run him out of town. He is the worst owner we could have ever asked for. Period. His record, let's talk about the owner's record before we go firing Jay Gruden and blaming Jay Gruden. Why don't we look at Dan Snyder's 139 and 180, a 43% win total. Disgusting. Let's talk about some of the debacles Dan Snyder's had. He fired Marty Schottenheimer. Why? Because Schottenheimer wouldn't lick his boots, wouldn't pat him on his head. You know he's a midget, right? He goes about 5'6". He's got that Napoleon complex. It's rumored that his chair in his house was lifted so that way he could look down at his guests. He's got a little high chair at the top at his dinner table, so he feels good about himself, and he can look eye level with people. Why don't you just get a stack of phone books, man? Let everybody know about it. You don't gotta hide it with the fancy chair. Just sit on a stack of phone books. Playoff record as owner: 2-5. 5 appearances in the playoffs with 2 wins. 5 appearances in the playoffs over 20 years. 20 years. Dan Snyder is a weirdo who has absolutely ruined this fan base. We are as apathetic and as we've ever been. I can't tell you, I barely turn on the game these days. Barely. I don't blame Jay Gruden. I don't blame Alex Smith for getting hurt. That shit happens. You got to understand from the fans' perspective how long we've been putting up with this for. This weirdo with his hype machine and always, selling off draft picks. And then going out and overpaying for these big, giant babies like Hainsworth, who absolutely crush our salary cap. For years, we've dealt with this guy. When is the league going to say, you know what, you're detrimental to our product? One of the most historic franchises in all of sports. All of sports. We've got our baggage just like anybody. You talk about real fans. Redskins fans are as loyal as they come. We've stuck in the good times and in the bad times. And there's been way, way more bad times than good. Period. I think before we start talking about firing Jay Gruden and his coaching staff and thinking that's the issue, I think we need to start a petition to move Dan Snyder the hell up out of D.C. Somebody needs to buy this maybe the city can buy it back from him. Maybe Washington, D.C. can do it. Here's the thing. Dan Snyder wants to build a new stadium, right? He's not going to really have too many people to go in there and sit in that thing if this keeps up. He might be the worst thing to happen in D.C. ever, ever. It's ripping the heart out of this town. It's always been politically divided to a certain degree, but we would unify around, the Redskins. Go back and look at those Reagan years, all the Super Bowls and everybody was winning. Go look at it. Look, you had Republicans and Democrats and set their issues aside and go watch the Skins play. Who the hell is going to watch them these days? It's depressing. It's the same story over and over and over again. And I tell you, I don't know how much more of this crap I can take from these guys. We need a fresh face. And I'm not talking about a head coach. I'm talking about an owner. It's a good old boys club where he brings in Allen as the general manager. The fuck does he know about football? He's a numbers guy. Oh, but his dad was a coach for the Redskins, so that means no. No. Oh, but we're going to hire Doug Williams, not because he's the best guy for it, but because he was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. So we're going to hook him up. No. No, man. This good old boys club has got to stop, man. People have followed this team for generations. Generations, man. We love this team. And they have near ruined it for a lot of us. It's constant and it's consistent. Knee-jerk reactions and this and that. It's just Dan Snyder doesn't deserve the Redskins. He bought the Redskins. I mean, it's just the way it is. He doesn't deserve the team. He doesn't deserve what it means to the city, what it means to the people in and around DC that grew up watching the Redskins. For God's sakes, I'm watching the Baltimore Ravens play. Ravens didn't even exist when I was a kid. Until 96, I was like 13, 14 years old. We watched the fucking Ravens. Now I'm turned on to watch the Ravens. Fire Dan Snyder. Somebody get this video out to the NFL. Look, it's time. Vote him out. He sucks. He's not doing any good for the league. He sucks. He's the worst thing to happen. Buy him out. Give him $2 billion. Tell him to go to fuck on about his business somewhere. Ruining this team. Y'all have a good one.